Don Lemon, but I'm so glad to have all of you here. Everybody, thumbs up, like and share, like and share, like and share. I love you. I love you, everybody. I'm so glad that you're with us at this odd time. Hey, Dave Dowling, up there in Canada, my sweet, and you sent this cold air down here. Whew, it's too much. All right, everybody, and we're up in 10. William Glad, I'm so welcome to the family. I'm so glad to see you. 4. All right, Snowman, how you doing? Peace and much love to you. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, based in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I am so happy to be with you, and I want to give a special shout out to this station, my home station, AM 950 Radio. We have people who are listening to us from all over the country, indeed, from all over the world. But it's this little station that gives me my base, my foundation, and I want to thank you because I know that we need you, AM 950 Radio, more than ever before. There are just a handful, as you well know, Jim Narekas of Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, and Ronnie Patrice, brilliant Democratic strategist, Palestinian American activist, and Jane Ruby, League of Women Voters, Chicago, all my dear friends, my family here. We only have a handful of progressive talk radio stations in the whole country, and this is one of those stations. Is it hard to get sponsors? Absolutely. But they don't require that. What they do is require that you get the message out. And then they just said, what we'll do is pump it out with the resources that we have. So please support AM 950 Radio. Please support Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. Because if you want to know what you're looking at, the most easily accessed up until the online platforms has been corporate media. And quite frankly, reflexively, we turn on television, right? We turn on the radio. But as my father said, freedom is not free. And you get the opinions of those who pay you. And so let's get right into this, because now we're finding that even though Tom Homan, the border czar, went into Minneapolis last week and said, we're doing a drawdown. We're not surrendering, but we're drawing down. Well, now they have warrantless arrests. They were talking about arresting Don Lemon and Georgia Ford a little more than a week ago. When I saw him on the 19th, they were talking about it, and he was looking at his phone. I said, let him arrest you. They'll make you a hero. He looked at me like I was crazy. I said, they're going to arrest you, Don. They're going to. I've known Don 30 years. I said, they're going to arrest you. That's going to happen. It's going to happen. And it did. And now you don't have a safe space in the church. Pastors are now looking for specific places in the church where you can have sanctuary, because now ICE can go in and take you. Now they are tracking what ministers are saying. They've always done that. They did that with Dr. King. They did that in my father's ministry. I get it. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about that and Taylor Emmett. I cannot wait to get your assessment. Ronnie and Patrice, you're down there in Texas, of this tremendous win. It's like a 31-point swing. President Trump won this district by 17 points. Taylor won this district, won his primary by 14 points. That's a 31-point swing. What is going on? It's not about the party, y'all. It's about the people. People want their power. They know that they've got it. So I've got this tremendous panel here. Let me start with you, Jim Narekas, because you, Ari Paul, has published on Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting a tremendous piece, really analyzing what these arrests mean, because it was Georgia Fort and Don Lemon, but it was also for the people, including the former president of the NAACP, Attorney Nakima Levy Armstrong. They were all arrested. So what are we to make of these arrests, particularly of the journalists?
Yeah, I think it is important to distinguish between the arrests of the people who were leading the protest and the arrests of the journalists. Now, the people who are protesting is a First Amendment protected activity. Worshipping is also a First Amendment protected activity. And these rights come into conflict here, where people want to exercise their right to worship, another group of people want to exercise their right to speak out and protest, and that's a complicated issue where you have to balance those issues. The reporters, it's not complicated. Reporters are exercising their First Amendment right to freedom of the press. They are not disrupting the service. There's no conflict between what they want to do and any other person's First Amendment rights. They are simply being vindictively punished by the Trump administration for daring to talk about opposition to what the Trump administration is doing. And they regard any kind of contradiction, any kind of exposure of a narrative that is not their preferred official version of reality, to be disloyalty, to be a form of conspiracy with the forces of evil who are trying to thwart the Trump administration's crusade for righteousness. It really is a rejection of the First Amendment. Really, the idea that instead of having a country where people have a guaranteed right to be able to report on the reality around them and to share that their understanding of reality with the public at large, that is not a right recognized by the Trump administration, as with so many other rights. They just think that it is their position, it is their prerogative to say, no, you were with these people who are engaged in protests, and therefore you're a criminal. You're trespassing. And I think it's interesting to think, if Georgia Ford or Don Lemon had attended this service just to see what was going on, that would be completely within their rights from the Trump administration's point of view. But because they are there to report on it, because they're there to engage in a First Amendment protected activity, somehow their attendance at this service becomes a crime. And that is just a completely bizarre understanding of the law, of the Constitution, of democracy.
Jim, help me to understand, what is a journalist supposed to do if you're available to go into the sanctuary? And look, the Pope speaks to the public, right? He's covered. When cardinals speak in these great cathedrals, Rania, Jane, they're covered. You bring the cameras in. Dr. King was covered in a church. Reverend's been covered in a church. I mean, that happens all the time. So yeah. What are they telling you that you're supposed to do? What are the parameters now? I mean, are there new rules?
Well, I think the rules are whatever Donald Trump is irate about becomes a crime. That seems to be the rule that the Justice Department now operates under. But a church service, it's not a private. It's not a private ceremony. It's not like you had to be on a list in order to get in there. It's not like there were signs posted saying, don't come in unless you are a member of our church. This is a church service open to all, and you can't have something that is open to everyone except reporters. You can't say anyone can come here unless they are trying to do journalism, in which case, suddenly your participation as a member of the public becomes criminal trespass. That is not something, you can't take something that is perfectly legal until you add a First Amendment protected activity to it. That turns the Bill of Rights on its head.
Well, why is the journalist protected in the Bill of Rights? I mean, it's the only profession that is protected. What is the thinking behind that?
The understanding is that you can't have a free society unless people are able to freely report on violations of that freedom. The First Amendment protects the press because the press is supposed to protect all the other liberties guaranteed in the Bill of Rights. That is the primary function of a media under a democracy, is to serve as a watchdog to make sure that the government is not behaving in a tyrannical manner, and to share the information and the ideas that are necessary to have an informed populace that can take part in self-governance.
Let me go around and let me just ask everybody else who's impaneled here. I know that you only have a few more minutes with us, Jim, but I want to get a sense, because Jane Ruby and Rania Patrice also, they function in the political spaces. And Rania, as a campaign manager, as a strategist, as an activist, you plan events in churches. And I want to know what you think. What do you think of this? I mean, how is there? Do you have a new approach? First of all, what did you think of the arrest? And does this change how you organize or how you campaign, how you structure campaigns?
The first question, I was dismayed, but I'm because we have seen the escalation.
Mhm.
In your city, Kat Abu-Ghazaleh, who's running for Congress, has been indicted for protest.
You know what? You're going in and out.
Uh-oh. Can
Oh,
you
yeah.
hear me? Is that
Okay.
better?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yes.
So I'll take them out if it continues. But I was just saying, in Chicago, Kat Abu-Ghazaleh and 5 other people were indicted for protesting, for protesting ICE on public property. Their protected right to do so, et cetera, et cetera. Before that, we had the detention of Mahmoud Khalil, many others. For that, we've seen, and then for that, let's just be really honest. There's been decades of oppression in Black and let me take these out. I'm gonna take these out.
Yeah, it's okay. Oh my goodness. Now we can't hear you. Put them back in. I'm going to go to Jane, but don't go out. Stay in, because if you go out, I think that'll compromise the rest. Stay right there. Stay right there. Just put your earpieces back in, and we'll work with it. But Jane, she was speaking to put your earbuds back in, Rania, and we'll work that out. Oh darn it, Jane, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you make of this? Because she's been working in Chicago on a campaign, and we're watching people be indicted for protesting. Now, mind you, Dr. King was arrested. He's got mugshots. Most activists do have mugshots. They have been arrested. They have been charged, and Dr. King served jail time. But there's something different now, Jane. But hold that thought. Let me go back to Rania. Rania, you were talking about, it's okay. You were talking about you're involved in a campaign here in Chicago. And I mean, okay, you're indicted for practicing journalism. You're indicted for peacefully assembling and
Absolutely. Yeah. And then before, and that's what I was saying, before that, you had students being picked up off the streets for literally practicing their First Amendment protected rights. And so we just have seen this constant escalation. And of course the media was next, because how do you silence an entire masses of people? You hide the truth from them. And so that's, this is what he's been doing. And it's not surprising. It's vile and disgusting. And unfortunately, there was a playbook leading up to this where they told us that this is what they wanted to do and what they were going to do, and now we're seeing it play out. But as far as organizing goes, and I've said this honestly since he was elected, before he was sworn in, that we are going to really have to start getting hyper local, which I think we're seeing. And not that that protects us anymore, but really this idea that like we all need to show up in DC, or we all need to show up in New York, or we all need to show up in this one place, that's obviously not what we're seeing happen. So I think there has been an adjustment. And then beyond that, I think I can't tell you how many conversations I think we're probably all part of, as far as getting legal teams in place and getting sort of having your break glass plan in place. Because I mean, even myself, like when I leave the country, I have a whole protocol when I come back into the country, not because the country I'm going to, because of coming back to the United States. This is the world we're living in right now. It's just madness. And also, again, we were told this is what he was going to do.
But but it's not just him. I mean, because if you listen to these tech bros, because they're calling it Jim Narakis, this techno fascism. I mean, these are people there. Elon Musk has 2 corporate cities in your state. Yeah. Basically, I mean, these are people who don't, Peter Thiel, they're not keen on elections. They don't think we need them. I mean, certainly the president has given voice to this, but the people who are putting the money behind it and who are funding it and fueling it, it's these guys. And, the president's 80. These guys are really at approaching the apex of their powers. They're approaching them.
Yeah. Well, and Donald Trump is not who wrote Project 2025 either.
Well,
so to your point, it wasn't like his brainchild. He's just sort of along for the ride in some ways. Yeah.
Well, I mean, because his charisma is being used, and my father put it. He said, what makes him so sad is to see someone with such a gift of charisma. I mean, because charisma is a gift. It is. Yeah. He said, but he's using it in a way that is not helping people. And that is, and he said, it hurts my heart to see that, because if he could use all of this power that he has in another way, boy, it could take America and the world into a whole different place. Yeah. Jane Ruby, before I bring Jim back in, before he goes, your thoughts about this? I mean, because, I tried to get you last week and you were having the debates, right? Which I'm so glad to see the League of Women Voters doing that. Got to get you to do the presidential debates again. Hello. That's another. No, that's not another story. That is the story. So what did you make of this?
Well, I think for, in the work that I do, a lot of people come to me and are like, oh my gosh, the past year has been the worst year ever in our history, like full on democracy in crisis. And not to sort of diminish their feelings about it, but it really doesn't put into context that for the past 250 years of our country, people have been fighting to make a more inclusive and just democracy for all. Like, this country was not founded on inclusivity. And when we, the systems that are in place right now didn't just pop up overnight. These have been systemic for 250 years. And what we're seeing now, which is why it's sort of been amplified to such a degree, is the comfortable class is being affected in ways that they weren't before. The white, comfortable suburban class, their lives are being disrupted by what's happening in such a rapid, escalating way, between sort of white Americans getting murdered by the government, between, children being kidnapped and put in detention centers, between, people being kidnapped from the front yards, nannies, daycares. The economy is being disrupted in such a way that the people who are not benefiting off of the systems but are comfortable enough that whether there's injustice going around, they're not so affected that they're willing to, fight for change. And we're seeing in such a rapid escalation of the comfortable people being much more affected. And, I've done a lot of traveling this past year, and, rural towns in Vermont are holding, protests on the side of the road, and you're seeing single people just holding up a sign saying "ICE out of here." Like, I was in Galena this weekend and seeing, a massive group of people by the side of the road with protest signs. We're really seeing activation in places that we haven't before, to really stage the kind of monumental protest that it will take to not get us back to the way things were before, because I think that the system wasn't working for people before, but to set a new standard for what we will accept of our government and set a new tone for what we want to see out of our government. Like, Santita, we've spoken so much about how the success in these sort of progressive elections is the power of the people, as opposed to, party agendas and stuff. And what we're seeing, the power of the people is really going to dictate what the future America will be.
Jim Narakis, what is the takeaway? And happy birthday to Janine Jackson of Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. We love her. And we've been doing so much work together, oh my goodness, for decades now. And we just really need fairness and accuracy in reporting. And everybody, freedom is not free. And I'm going to make the solicitation. You don't have to, Jim. Fair.org needs contributions. They need you to help sponsor them. There's an expression that the freest, richest Black man in America is a Black preacher, because Black people pay him. There's a reason that Dr. King could speak so freely, because who was paying him. Reverend's been able to speak freely because the people who were most in need gave them the most support. Well, we need to do that with our independent media and with our independent media watchdogs. And watchdog is not, I think, doesn't really tell you Fair's full story, Rania and Jane, because what they do is they don't just watch media, corporate media. They analyze it. They help you to understand who's working for whom and what people's motivations are and what their backstories are. You need to know that. As they're questioning you, you need to question them. You need to know who's doing the questioning. What I think my father's press retinue during his campaigns, they were called the alligators. It's a play on allegations. And he said, well, I don't like the allegations, and I'm worried about the alligators. So they walked around with wearing alligators, for both campaigns. So there's that. But please, fair.org, please put them on your list, because we need them to keep on doing the things that they're doing. Jim, now that I've said that, because I think it's very important, because we can't continue. You're not going to ride to freedom in Pharaoh's chariot. We're not going to get grants to do what we do.
Right.
We got to figure.
We've been very lucky to have supporters this is our 40th year as an organization, and we have had a core of individuals who appreciate what we do and are willing to fund us, and
yes.
That allows us to call things as we see them, and not as some kind of sponsor would like things to be.
Well, thank God for that. I mean, because you do have some people who can and who do support, and all they want you to do is to keep on doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And we need them, but we also need you. We need you. We need your support. So, Jim, do you, I mean, I guess we'll see Georgia Fort and Don Lemon go to trial. Well, and I'm hoping that Georgia Fort will get the support that Don is getting, because Don has got one of the top lawyers in the world, Abby Lowell. I'm wondering who's going to support Georgia Fort.
More than one judge said that they did not have a legal right to arrest either Don Lemon or Georgia Fort, and they were able to eventually convince a grand jury to issue indictments. But the indications are when judges have looked at these charges, they've tossed them out. And I'm hopeful that we won't see a trial. I'm hopeful that a judge will say, no, there's no basis for a crime here. There's nothing that a jury could decide happened, that would add up to the elements of a crime being committed, and therefore there's no need to have a trial. That is the outcome that should happen. I think it's interesting that Georgia Fort, she's an independent Minnesota reporter, born in St. Paul, and she has a background. She did a lot of coverage of the George Floyd protests, and the trial of George Floyd's murderer. And I think that's really important, because there is a connection here. As Jane was saying, this is not the abuse of power that you see from ICE is not new. We live in a country that has 1,000 extrajudicial murders a year. That is a grave flaw in our society that pretends to call itself a democracy. When you have police killing 1,000 people a year outside of executing people as though they're judge and jury, and the George Floyd protests reflected a realization that this is not something that a democracy can tolerate. You can't have a democracy where the police are going around killing people with impunity. And there was a very strong protest movement in Minneapolis, in St. Paul, against that kind of impunity, and it resulted in George Floyd's case of people being sent to prison. And the media felt very threatened by the political alliance that was formed to try to bring police power under democratic control. And you saw media concocting this crime wave, the so-called Ferguson effect, and hyping this idea that by talking about defunding the police, that the Black Lives Matter had unleashed a reign of terror on the country. And this has this framing of Black Lives Matter as a threat to the social domestic tranquility, had a lot to do with why Trump got back into office. There was this corporate media generated idea that there was a crime crisis that Democrats had tolerated, had instigated, and along with a hype about immigration and a so-called border crisis, that was a media generated crisis, had a lot to do with why Trump got back into the White House. But the movement for accountability against impunity did not go away. And I was just reading a piece in the Atlantic about Minneapolis, about the organizing there. And more than once in the article, it talks about how the nucleus of the defense of immigration and defense of people of color in the Twin Cities, because it's not, you don't have to be an immigrant to be harassed by ICE. Just have to have the wrong shade of skin. The networks that are organizing to track ICE, to defend families, to defend workers, to defend children, it comes out of the movement to demand justice for George Floyd. So there is a continuity between that movement and this movement. They're the same movement, and while there's a focus on the extreme authoritarianism of the Trump administration, it does draw back to issues that we've had for centuries in this country, and that we have in the 21st century have become to confront, despite the efforts of corporate media to demonize these movements, to make them seem like some kind of threat to the public. I think that people in Minneapolis are seeing what the real threat is. It could not be more openly exposed than it is when you see ICE acting like an occupying army that treats everyone as though they have no civil liberties, because that's the framing of the Trump crackdown as an anti-immigrant crackdown. It's convenient because immigrants are seen as not having the same civil liberties that citizens have, and therefore because everyone is a suspected immigrant, and therefore they can treat everyone as though they don't have any civil liberties. That the guarantees that are embodied in the Bill of Rights are swept away because you're defining everyone as a potential illegal immigrant, and therefore they don't have any rights that need to be respected. And that has when you see the journalists are being arrested for covering protests, you see the same erasure of fundamental guarantees of rights that flows throughout this whole administration. It's the basis of this administration is that the rights that are the basis of democratic government, we're going to stop recognizing them. We're going to treat people as though they are subjects of sort of new royalism.
But it is against this backdrop that people are pushing back. We see it in Minneapolis. We see it in Chicago. We see it. We've seen millions of people, quite frankly, turn out over the past few weeks. And Rania, that goes to what happened in Texas. What happened with this race is, I think someone on social media suggested that this is of biblical proportions, because we've seen a 31 point. When I saw that President Trump won this district by 17 points, and this gentleman, Taylor Remmitt is his name, he won by 14 points. That's 31 points. What happened?
I think this is, and I don't remember if, I think you said this in the opening, and you and I've talked about this a lot. I think this is sort of despite the party versus because of
I
the
told you,
party.
it's not
Yeah,
about the
like,
Democrats. This is about
no,
this man and his
no,
message.
it's
Yeah.
about him, his message, the people, reaching people, meeting people where they are. And I say this all the time. You've heard me say it. There is a difference between trying to be all things to all people and meeting people where they are. Being all things to all people is establishment Democrat BS. And I say this as a lifelong Democrat,
Yeah. I am
but
too, but I can still be critical.
Absolutely. I just always feel the need to say it because I get all that hate mail.
I mean,
But
you know what? And let me just say this. You can say what you will. I don't believe that anyone or any entity should function without criticism. That's
I
not fair.
agree. I
That is not fair.
agree. And
So
that's
you
how
and
we end
this
up here, right?
no,
That's
no,
how we
this
end up
love
where
me or
we
leave
are.
me, go back to
Yeah.
Africa, all this. Look, I'm
Yes.
done with that. Now, you
No,
know what?
same.
I'm staying right here and I'm going to criticize you. Teddy Roosevelt said that dissent is the highest form of patriotism. I mean, what do you want? That's what you're supposed to do. So, the Miss
Yeah.
Democrat, yes, this is not about the party.
No,
It
it's not
isn't.
about the party because frankly, the Democratic Party is always learning the wrong lessons. If I hear one more and I am a consultant, I get it, but if I hear one more consultant say, "How do we make our candidates seem more authentic?"
Oh,
I'm going to lose it. But you get the wrong lesson here, right? It's not how do we recruit authentic candidates? How do we bring in working people into our party? How do we make sure representation is not just a talking point, but it's a real thing? No, those aren't the lessons we learn. We say, how do we make it seem that way? And that makes me want to pull my hair out. I won't, but it does. And so I do think that we've seen sort of this we've seen this happen across a number of local races across very red states just this year. And I do think it is a reminder that, yes, Donald Trump is atrocious, and even the right, parts of the right, are sick of him, but the anti-Trump only message does not work. We have to stand for something. How are we going to make your life better? And just talking about how terrible he is not a winning message. And I think that's what Taylor captured. I think it's what Zohran captured. I think there was a state local race in Iowa where the same thing happened, where they're capturing this moment of, I see your pain, I see you and I feel you, and here's how I'm going to make life better, and here's what he's doing. Yes, we got to name it, we have to name it, but here's how I'm going to be better and different. And I just think that's what we're seeing. And if as a party we can actually latch on to that and do something real with it, I think we might actually be in okay shape if we have elections, that is. But, I
mm,
do think that people need something to believe in, and just saying, oh, he's horrible and awful all the time is not a winning message. And we see that over and over and over again, and we don't want to accept that as reality. This is like the proverbial we don't want to accept that as reality. All of us here understand that, but I think that's what we're seeing. And I'm hoping that they start coming along. And I listen, and like Ken Martin put out a statement saying, oh, like this is a message to the Republicans and all this stuff. And I'm like, buddy, like we have to grow backbones. We finally saw Hakeem Jeffries today say that they're not going to help Republicans pass a budget, but like what did that take? How many Democrats voted for $18 billion more in DHS funding, including ICE funding? Democrats are voting for this. Like, make this make sense. So anyway, I could go on, but
no,
we've got to stop.
no. If you don't go on, we're not going to get anywhere. That they released an autopsy, a post-mortem of the 2024 election. Democrats won't look at it. They want to ignore it. And the thing is, they need to understand Obama wasn't even about the Democrats, although he is an absolute mainstream Democrat. People gravitated to his message.
Yep.
They were hopeful that they were going to get real change.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's what people like about Bernie. That's what people have liked historically about these people who they are. They're not the people. Americans don't care about parties. And let me tell you something. The young people, they're done with it.
Yep.
They don't want to hear. You've got a youngster, a young adult, Jim.
Yeah.
They don't care about my nieces and nephews. They're like, they have fathers in Congress. One who's trying to get back, one who's already there. Their eyes go this way. You talk to them about a party, they're like, no.
It's
That,
what I love about young people. They're beholden to nobody. No, but
but
they're
they're
except for
beholden to a
like a
principle, right?
exactly, exactly,
Wait a minute.
exactly.
That's where
Yeah.
Jane comes in because
Yeah.
this is her age group. I'm I'm very serious. I mean, this is like, but you're between. Jim and I are up here, and you and Jane are right down there. But that's all right. We're not mad. My father told me if you don't like birthdays, try missing one. So look, I'm all right. I'm hanging in there. I got my AARP card, and I'm not mad about it. But I think that when you look at this, it is this race occurred against the backdrop of Alex Pretty and Renee Good and Keith Porter and healthcare, right? Or lack thereof.
Yep.
Affordability. There is Zoran Mamdani wasn't about the Democrats. It was about him saying, I'm going to go to the Bronx before I go to Gaza. I mean, not Gaza before I go to Tel Aviv. I'm like, what are you talking about? No. And I'm trying to figure out how to get you all free buses. I don't know if he's going to be able to deliver on much of it, most of it, but people want to hear that. And you know what? While we're giving $1 trillion cuts to people who are on their way to becoming trillionaires, Americans are demanding something else.
Yeah.
They did not have 50,000 people at this march, at this general strike march a week ago. They had hundreds of thousands of people. I looked at the aerial shots. I've been marching all of my life. I know 10,000, I know 100,000, I know 1 million people. They had well north of 500,000 people. I mean, the people were everywhere, and they're marching in below zero weather.
Yeah.
Okay, and so I think you have to say everything. You've got to go on and on, Rania, because if you don't, well, the Democrats are going to get left behind.
Yeah.
Because people's issues are going down the street. 20 million families are without health care right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you're exactly right. You're exactly right. And this is my endless frustration, I know probably shared here too, is people are suffering. This is not this is not a drill. We're not joking here. This is not exaggeration. People are suffering. They're dying. They're being abducted, which there is a long-standing tradition of abducting Black and brown people from our streets. And so I'm not gonna pretend like that's not a long-standing tradition here, but we're living in a different time. It's happening in front of all of our eyes. The suffering is real. And if we again, as Democrats, don't get it together and really start talking to people where they are, not the bloviating, not the other stuff, it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. And this idea that Trump is just bad enough for us to win is madness. We got to get over that.
The thing that is, to me, most striking about the Zoran Mamdani campaign is that it was not about a politician coming forward with a message and saying, here's my message. This is a bottom up campaign. The Democratic Socialists of America are like an actual functioning party where people get together and have meetings and talk about politics and talk about how they can change the world. And this is the way that parties used to be in America and haven't been for many decades now. They've been captured by consultants. No offense.
I'm different. I'm different from
yeah,
the rest.
I know that.
She is though.
The idea that people can, as individual grassroots people, can get together, combine their forces, combine their energies, and actually make change in their community, in their country, is a radical idea. And I think that what scares media more about the Democratic Socialists of America is not the socialism part; it's the democratic part. It's the idea that people have the ability to get together and use their numbers to affect change is terrifying to people whose power and position depend upon the masses of people being passive, being spectators, being consumers of politics, not participants in it. And I think that is the exciting thing about Mamdani, and the exciting thing about the defense against fascism in Minneapolis is that people are getting together, joining with their neighbors, joining with their community, and working for real change. And that is, to me, the most inspiring thing that there is.
Well, Jane, what do you see? I mean, because the League of Women Voters just hosted, was it the Senate debate?
Mm-hmm.
What about the questions that were asked? I mean, are you happy with the field? Do you think that this is reflective of where is the field reflective of where people want to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think the two-party system in our country is just morally corrupt. I think that both parties are, because of things like unlimited campaign finance flexibility, because of the tech bro oligarchy and all of these higher systems of power. I think also the fear of a multi-party system, a fear of systems that other countries have that allow for more democracy, alternative systems like, public campaign finance options, ranked choice voting, a bunch of things can fall under that category. Both parties benefit from the current system that we have, and it is a moral crisis. And what we're seeing is the stress being put on the two-party system, of which, it is just so ingrained in everything legislatively, and everything about how our government operates, and everything how campaigns operate, that there's so much stress on that system because it isn't working, that what we're seeing is, it's cracking and breaking, and you're seeing sort of, really effective moments of democracy working a lot better, like in New York City, which has a public campaign financing option for decades at this point, which also has implemented ranked choice voting for their municipal elections. And you're seeing, a very popular type of candidate that does not really fit into the two-party system, end up winning, and within the first month has already done incredible legislation. And I think that, you're not going to see that everywhere yet, but it's these sorts of cracking in the system, and the more cracks that we start to see everywhere is really where we're going to, arrive at a place that our current system just isn't going to work. I think that our Constitution is the oldest modern Constitution. It is very, very hard to change our Constitution intentionally. They made it very, very difficult to add things, amend things, be more inclusive. And what we're seeing is, it is really being tested now. And, as much as we are in a constitutional crisis, and rule of law and due process, and certain, especially in the legal sense, systems are inherently important to, protecting people, we're also sort of seeing, maybe it's not everything, and maybe we need to start thinking about modernizing and what the future will look like. And to sort of go into your question, like, I think candidate forums and debates are an incredibly important space to sort of ask these big questions of the people that want to represent you. And in the context of sort of the forum that that the League had organized with ABC7 for the Illinois U.S. Open Senate seat, there are certain limitations to it, but I think the reason that forum was so successful was because you knew where the candidates stood, but it gave them an opportunity to really, on the sort of micro level, show who they were and what their differences were. Because, you know, there's a lot of people who just have the same thoughts on everything, but it's sort of like, well, how are you going to implement this? What are the actual numbers that you're using to base the policy decisions that you are seeking? And that's what we were really looking to do with that in a public space, is hold the candidates accountable to, you know, very, very micro differences in what they're what they're, you know, running for, based on a very limited system we have in general. Like, you know, everyone who's running for office, like, are held to the limiting factors of what our democracy allows or doesn't allow. And, you know, everyone kind of has to work in that system. Like, even, you know, all of us on the call who are probably, you know, seen as quite left in, you know, our personal beliefs, you know, all of us inherently have, you know, worked in politics and participated in these very limiting structures that we have. Something that my husband's been saying a lot recently is, you know, it's certainly wild where, you know, the Democratic Party is to the right of Richard Nixon on a lot of policy positions. And he's like, you know, that's something that we kind of really have to sort of reckon with. And, you know, I've been seeing a lot of people, I'm a big Nixon scholar, and I've been seeing a lot of people be like, wait, Nixon had a plan that was sort of a roadmap to universal health care. Wait,
Yeah.
Nixon, you know, supported the ERA. Nixon did these things. And it's like, yeah, you know, there was a time where you could legislate things that were, you know, about expanding and improving, you know, and doing things that were the betterment of people. You know,
He facilitated affirmative action.
Yeah.
And what people do not know is that Jewel LaFontaine, who is John Rogers' mother. John Rogers, of course, launched Ariel, the Ariel Financial Management Group, Ariel Investments, one of the top Black-owned investment houses in the country, if not the world. Indeed, Melody Hobson, who's married to George Lucas, is now the president of it. And his mother was on track to be the first Black woman Supreme Court justice under Nixon. President Nixon sent Art Fletcher, who was an African-American Lincoln Republican, like so my grandparents were Lincoln Republicans, my mother's parents were. That was no big deal. And he was looking for Black businesses. He didn't care about your party. He was trying to get you funding. So the fact that we're so far to the right now, to your point, is really sad. But it goes to the core. Well, I hear you sighing, Rania. But I mean, but the good news is Texas. I mean, because you all got me at that Democratic Party event last year, and that was life changing. I said, I don't know how my father's done this. This is too much, because the resistance to it's so corporatized.
Yep.
You know, and we had our eyes on permanent roll up. I mean, while we were there, like I said, this is just a lot to do. So let me just ask you this before we go. And let me start with you, Rania. Do you think that Texas, what does it portend for the rest of the country coming into 2026?
I think it's exactly what you said at the top, and then just a moment there, just that this is not about party. When people are suffering and scared and afraid for their families and their children and their livelihoods, they don't care about party all of a sudden, you know, and we're seeing the curtain being pulled back on, obviously, on Trump and all the things, but we're also just seeing the curtain being pulled back on corporate politics in general. So I think, you know, to just the previous point here, you know, I think that that's exactly what we're seeing. So the sooner candidates, consultants, parties, whoever, everybody in the sort of this mix, is a big mix, understands that people want to be seen and heard and understand what you're going to do for them and their families, nobody's asking for anything that's radical here.
Hmm.
You know, the sooner we learn that lesson, I think the better off we're all going to be. Anybody who actually cares about humanity and decency and equity and, you know, all of those things these are the people I'm speaking to right now. The sooner we learn these lessons, the sooner we get there. And really understand that we are in this together, not to sound all cheesy or whatever, but we are all in this together. I mean, every community is under attack in one way or another, unless you're ultra, ultra, ultra wealthy, and, you know, and white and ultra, ultra, ultra wealthy. But we really are in this together, and this idea of locking arms and intersectionality has turned into such a buzzy buzzword, collective liberation, such a buzzy, you know, phrase. But the reality is, like, if you actually care about those things, then we do come together and lock arms and fight against what is in front of us right now. And that includes fighting against our own part. If you identify as a Democrat, fighting against, you know, our leadership that continues to do, you know, Schumer had to be strong-armed into doing what he just did on the Senate side. Like that, how are we still doing this? So
Well,
anyway,
you know, but isn't that the way politics works? I mean, because the Republicans are having a fight. I mean, both of these corporate parties have a tacit agreement to maintain the status quo. And the fact is, Americans are sick of the status quo, and they're going to leave both parties, period.
Absolutely.
And
this is the thing.
should.
We've talked about this too. In 2024, there is this mind-numbing talking point that Black and brown people overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump. No, they didn't. They stayed home. They stayed home. And why did they stay home? Because they didn't believe in anything that was being presented to them.
But wait a minute. It was just a critical portion who stayed home. The fact is, we were still the margin of victory. Where you did win, it's because Black and brown people showed up. Now, the fact is, you got to start delivering to people.
Yes.
Now, wait, because Black folks are showing up, and white people are showing up too. They're just voting for Trump. And all of them who were voting for President Trump were not voting for him because they were racist. That is not true. They thought he was going to do America first. They said, you know what? You said you weren't going to war, because I was listening to them talk. We believed you. We heard you were going to raise our wages. We believed you. We heard you were going to make it cheaper. We believed you. We heard. Well, you know what? But what he was going to do was make it cheaper for the people who already had money, because he was giving them massive tax cuts, and your health care was on the chopping block.
Yep.
You're not going to be able to afford to buy a house. And that is something that all of these people have had. They've been cooking this up for a long time. You guys, I literally have like a minute apiece for everybody before we go. Otherwise, I'm going to have to chop. And I don't want to do that. So, Jim Narakis, your minute. Fair.org.
I agree with Rania that this is a situation where the political class needs to step up, needs to be responsive to the people who are really trying to make change in their communities and in their country. And the people, I think, are showing the way. The political class is dragging their feet, and I think that this is a story that corporate media don't want to tell. But we need to have our own ways of communicating with each other to transform our desire for a different kind of America into reality.
Jane Ruby?
Yeah, one of my favorite educational thinkers is Paulo Freire, and I always sort of think about the concept of, you know, as someone who is oppressed, when you become liberated and you sort of are given the choice, you can, you know, become the oppressor yourself, or you can liberate those around you. And I think that, you know, sort of is kind of the foundation of just, you know, how we should think about humanity and how we think about taking care of each other. Mutual aid has become a huge thing, you know, in these moments of protest. You know, how do we take care of our local communities? I will do a plug for a program that the League of Women Voters of Chicago is going to be launching this week around election protection, but specifically peacekeeping, and bringing together faith groups, social work groups, for election day in order to ensure that people and workers on the polls feel safe on election day. And I think, you know, that very much goes in hand with sort of the mutual aid and taking care of each other. We have to really make sure that our elections are safe for people. But yeah, you know, we have a choice now. We can, you know, for all of those who are waking up, you know, the comfort class, we need to, you know, work on liberating other people, making that more just and equal democracy that is within our grasp, within our lifetime. We have the potential now to really sort of shift that change away from these, like, you know, creepy tech oligarchs who are all pedophiles and creeps and white men. And, you know, this is our moment, everybody. We really, you know, we can do it.
We better. Ronnie or Patrice, last minute belongs to you. Yikes.
I mean, ditto to Jane and Jim. But also, again, like, we keep seeing the Texas, Iowa, Kentucky. We've seen these races. Like, can we just please learn the right lessons and show up for each other and understand there is a better way. There is. We know there is. We got to show up for it and demand it. And to your point, Santita, and you've heard me say this joke, you know, rarely does a politician wake up deciding to do the right thing. We have to force them. And unfortunately, we got to force real hard these days. So let's go.
But you know, but that's a good thing, because that's the way the system is designed. It keeps you honest too.
Yeah, and engaged. Yeah.
That's right. Voting is the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end.
Yes.
You've got to, in order for this American project to work, in order for you to win, you have got to be involved. This is a tough form of government. Benjamin Franklin told a lady after the Constitutional Convention, she said, "What kind of government have you given us, sir?" He said, "A republic, if you can keep it." That's hard. This is hard work. That's why people have admired us all over the world, because they have read our founding documents and they're like, "What you want? This is a really ambitious project." That's right. And we're up for it. That's why people are marching. That's why people are pushing from the right and the left. And that's a good thing. I don't care about your party. You know how I feel, everybody. I care about your principles. Do you want everyone to have equal access to high quality health care, equal high quality health care, education, housing? I'm not saying everybody's going to have a mansion. Everybody's not. But everyone should have decent shelter. Everyone should have food that is not only edible, but that is edifying. Everybody deserves that. My pastor used to say, "I've never seen God make a mouth that God couldn't feed." And God loves everybody. No one is more special than the next. So just remember that. Everyone is special. Every life is precious. Think about that, everybody. Think about it. Ronnie, Patrice, you know I love you, and I know I kept you off, but I hope that the conversation was so stirring that you wanted to stay.
Absolutely. Always.
League of Women Voters Chicago, and of course, Jim Narekas, fairness and accuracy in reporting. And as I said, happy birthday to my dear sister friend.
Oh, pass it along.
Absolutely. And go on to dinner. Love you.
Thank you.
AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, the Santita Jackson Show. Much love, everybody. I love you guys. Thank you so much.